The Anvil Legionnaire Q&A came out today. Let's distill it. So, one of the biggest things that people take a look at is, can this system or ship or a capability or whatever they're adding to the game be used in multiple gameplay loops? One of the biggest ones that was asked about in this ship specifically was, can the Legionnaire have any type of cell or lockdown seating for bounty missions? And the answer is no. The discussion about boarding mechanics is paramount, and that is what everything focuses on. Another gameplay loop that was asked about is hacking. The focus of the hacking on board is only to be used for accessing ships, stations, etc. right at these docks that allow you to get on and off the ship. And what was also revealed in the Q&A is that there will be a counter-hacking capability by the defenders, almost like a mini-game fighting a mini-game, that it can be done. Another interesting side note is that co-pilots that are AI-controlled will be able to do the hacking for you, but for obvious reasons, it would be highly likely that if a player was on the defending side attempting to do the hacking minigame, they would defeat the AI. So it would most likely be a good focal point for the pilot maybe to jump seats and get on the hacking station if necessary on that co-pilot seat that also doubles as a hacking location. The maneuverability of the Legionnaire was also discussed, and they put it on comparable nature to the Cutty Steel. And the Cutlass Steel is a lesser armored vehicle and has excellent good thruster layout, a lot like the Legionnaire. So it is highly likely that the Legionnaire, once armor is actually factored into flight models and mechanics, and it actually is realized in the game, that the Legionnaire will be more sluggish, particularly in gravity effects. Although this is kind of something that's hotly debated about how much gravity has impact and how much armor has impact on flight mechanics. A good example of this is the C2 versus M2 Hercules right now. The C2 being lightly armored, and the M2 being more heavily armored than the C2, being the military variant of the... So right now, the M2 actually has great accountability for its roll-on, roll-off capabilities with vehicles and its storage of cargo, but in the future, when armor is actually considered properly, the maneuverability of the vessel and also the cargo will not be able to be hand-loaded to higher numbers than what's actually handled through the interface. There's a reason the interface only wants you to put so much SCU on board the M2. It's not just for balance reasons, but because the literal CG of the ship and the capabilities of the ship, it may not be able to exit orbit when you overload it too much in a properly heavy gravity environment. I think of planets when I think of that, or a moon with a heavy gravity, etc. So this is an interesting topic that will have to be developed over time. So armor is something that's still a question mark about how much more sluggish it would be. But there is no debate that the armor will be helpful, especially when you're being, on the attacking end, the offensive end of an engagement where there may be a capital class vessel or a large vessel shooting at this small ship, and you have many people on board. So the risk is very high. It's a high risk, high reward vessel, and it does a much better job at this type of work than many other vessels in its category. Comparisons to the Terrapin were made in that same regard, where it has the heavier armor, although this obviously does not have that same stealthy, close its systems for short periods of time capability like the little mighty Terrapin can, and it does not have the same scanning capabilities as the Terrapin. It's a completely different single focus vessel, but it is a single focus vessel that's small with serious armor. Speaking of how small it is confirmed that it can fit on an extra small hangar/pad. And one of the nice things about that is that we can confirm that it would land on top of the Liberator, a ship that would be very nice symbiotic with this, and other ships that have extra small hangars or space like that this could fit on. So this would be very good to work with, say, a Kraken, or possibly, if it can fit through the dang doors, an Idris. So there are many different sized vessels that fit that extra small category, and CIG's developers, when their responses in Q&A, have detailed how there's so variety of them, everything from the prospector all the way down. So the size of that type of extra small ship can vary greatly. So we'll have to see how, if it can or cannot fit into, say, for example, the Idris. That's the biggest question mark. But the fly-on, fly-off extra small pads will have no problem. There is no crew facilities on board, so you cannot sleep on this ship. And the idea is that it's supposed to go, do its mission, and then come back. The other part that was talked about was it able to act in some way to, say, trick the enemy, like using its hacking tools to be able to slow down the defense response or realize that it's there? And the answer was that is not in the cards for this ship. It is a very blunt instrument. I mentioned in my first video about this vehicle that it would be smart to mix it in with, say, 2-seat heavy fighters and hope that they don't notice this thing immediately. When you have, say, a whole group of ships that are acting, you may get lucky and be able to kind of use it, kind of mix it in before somebody actually really sorts through the ships properly and realizes, wait a minute, that is a drop ship. should say a boarding ship, to be specific. So we covered the maneuverability, we covered the armor, we covered most of the systems. The co-pilot is the one who operates the turrets, and also has to operate the hacking system. So there's a lot of load on the co-pilot seat, and the pilot has other weapon systems that are basically handled by the pilot and the shields. So there is a lot of work for those two people at the front. So do not expect to have everybody, even the pilot and the co-pilot, hop out of their seats to go board a ship. Unless you're willing to take the risk of losing the vessel, not manipulating the shields, or maybe you could manage them in such a way where, okay, there's only one working turret that can point at us. Before you hop out of the seat, angle the power to the shields and be able to confirm, okay, I think the shields will last long enough for this not to matter. We'll be able to run inside and take out that person in that turret before it's too foregone. Because remember, you are boarding the ship. So the docking port tunnel was mentioned by players in multiple questions. Is it basically a death trap? Is it like a death zone between the defenders and the offense? And it was stated by the developers that once it deploys, there will be these mechanisms that will come out of the walls that will allow you to get cover that is deployable, and that the offenders will be able to use that cover to kind of move up and start their attack with some form of protection. It is not known how much of protection that will be offered. We're going to have to find out. We'll see. Another thing about Legionnaire is that it has a short-range hacking capability, and remember, it is limited to handling the boarding systems, so the gates or even the air traffic control, if necessary, of a ship to be able to, or station, to get it into where it needs to be able to board that place if it's supposed to be able, if that's not a valid target. So it is very interesting to see. You cannot boost the hacking capability through blades on the server, or at least they were not confirming that. However, you will, once you get close to the vessel, you will be able to start the hacking process. They stated it would be a few kilometers away from the target before you had to worry about that basically being too far away where it wouldn't function. So that's basically most of the things I wanted to cover. I thought it was very obvious that they were handling heavy weapons, that they could handle heavy armored players that were in the boarding section, and also, of course, the breaching charges on the walls. That would all be accounted for in this type of scenario. It goes without saying that that they have, because of the lockers, because of the weapon lockers, because of the drop seats, or more accurately jump seats, I guess you could call them, the heavy jump seats, you should be okay with all that stuff, and the devs, of course, confirmed it. One thing I did want to mention is that during these Q&As, it seems like the same questions come up over and over again, and some of them are a little out there. For example, the one I led off with about the lockable seats, or the even like a brig style room for bounties, was one of those that kind of tied up an important question slot. So be sure to really think carefully if you're putting questions up, and really remind your friends to upvote the ones that you think are very valid for you, because that to me was never in the cards, but clearly that was something that was popular and received tons of upvotes on that question. So that really surprised me. And yeah, don't forget to tell your org, tell your friends to upvote the questions that matter to you about the ships that you're looking for. I wish this Q&A came out a couple days earlier so people can make their decisions and kind of melt and buy a little more leeway there. But it's still welcome information. We're also getting information on the timing for the new releases of the upcoming patches, which is very exciting. CIG has basically officially confirmed that there is a road to 4.0 as a release schedule, and that the goal is to have end of June be the 3.17.2 live, if everything goes well. And that's what Jake Capella from CIG said, if the current plan stays in place and everything works out. So that means that the 3.17.2 PTU will be very, very short order from now, if we're expecting end of June being 3.17.2 live. And that will be kind of a long upgrade cycle, because until the third quarter, we will not see 3.18 live. And then on the fourth quarter of this year, we'll see 3.19 live, if all goes well, of course. And the 4.0 Evo at that time also becomes part of the game plan. And then even their optimistic post here writes may slip into quarter one, which means that it could drop 4.0 Evo into 2023. And then 4.0 live, aka Pyro, at least based on what we heard recently, that would be in early 2023 into first quarter. If you see anybody posting up videos that say Pyro and 4.0 and good information, secret information, they're probably just getting you to click their videos. I'm telling you every single ounce of information we currently have, and it was in a post that's 4 bullet points essentially, with Jake Acapella kind of adding an addendum to it, that it will highly depend on the success of the 3.18 PTU for this schedule to stick. So just keep that in mind. Now remember, a quarter is 3 months, so the 2 to 3 month cycle per patch is going to be very, very optimistic, and it could be something that we could see if everything goes well. But based on everything we're hearing, this is very exciting stuff. I think there's a lot of server blocks that they need to overcome. I think there's a lot of background technology that they need to roll out. Even like the rendering and the gen tech that they need to bring up to par, you know, from the engine side, is going to have to be rolled out dramatically in the next couple patches to really make Pyro possible. Remember, they had to pull all of Levski and everything involved with that just to fit the Nine Tails lockdown, for example. If I remember right, I believe it was that big ship fight that they had to add, and they had to pull Levski just to fit it. So do bear in mind that in current conditions, it would be impossible for them to put in Pyro unless it was on a whole nother server. And they said emphatically they do not want that. So I don't know. Based on what we have, this is exciting, and I'm reading between the lines and reading what at least is on the roadmap pieces we have left of these upcoming patches. There should be significant server and back-end fixing in general to the engine that will allow these things to happen. And that means that the servers will be far more stable, fit far more people ideally, and also allow for a whole new star system to be born. Very exciting times. Thank you all if you made it this far. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have already, please share this video with anybody you think would appreciate it. As always, thanks, and have a good night.